Is it morning in America or the dawn of a new apocalypse? Today on the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. Well, hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I am the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager of ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 196. And I hope you guys are all doing pretty good. I am somewhat recovered from the events of Tuesday night. I have this tradition of staying up as late as possible. And this year, actually watched the election with some friends and got to do a couple explaining the election lectures to people where I was asked to stand at the front of the room and explain what the guys on the big screen TV were talking about. And I think I missed my calling. I think I should have been a lecturer at some point. And that's actually some of my... Okay, so it is November right now, and I encourage all of my agents and any agents listening to this podcast that right now in November you should be doing your business planning for next year. Every escrow company is going to have business planning classes, and they always bring them out in January and February and March. If you're taking business planning in March, you've already missed first quarter. So that's why we do it in November over here. And I realized, doing this is like, how do I tweak what I've done last year to look at next year? That maybe I should lean in a little bit more into the educational side of my marketing, and maybe I should lean in a little bit more into the humor side. A lot of serious people out there. What are my strengths? I like to think I'm funny. In fact, I'm the funniest person I know. That's why I crack myself up. And maybe I should do more humorous, but not silly. And that's the fine line, right? It's like, I can't tell if I'm over the top anymore. So, but I'm sure you, the audience, would be happy to point out my flaws and foibles and everything else. So part of this, dynamic we have here, this little ecosystem, all right, maybe I could get some feedback on these things. Show notes below, boys and girls. That's the other thing I really need to work on. Right about now, little graphics would be popping. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. So, like, so I know you're there. It helps the algorithm. Share it with your friends who could help this information. And God, that felt so commercial, right? And this is more than commercial, right? This is our relationship here, right? This is not pure money, right? I do this for my own mental health, right? And it really does help me to sit down once a week and go over mentally the big picture of real estate. So what is the big picture, and what's the biggest impact we have so far? Well, as promised, last 2 weeks we've been covering part 1 and part 2 of the 2 different campaigns and what their plans for real estate was. And now that we have a clear-cut winner by Thursday, which is amazing, all right, I was honestly expecting to be recording this, depending on how the riots in Arizona go and Maricopa County, depends on who wins the, conquering the courthouse, I was halfway expecting me doing this with a flak jacket and a helmet on, going, well, soon as we win this revolution, I'll tell you exactly what's going to be happening to real estate, or who knows? And we sit there going, citizens of America, now that we have conquered the radio station, we shall be taking all land and dispersing it evenly to the peoples. Depending on which side I needed to jump onto at the last moment as I saw who was going to win. So, but we have a winner, and it is Donald J. Trump. He'll be coming in as the 47th President of the United States of America, which makes this both harder and easier at the same time, all right? Because easy is that we have 4 years of history to look back at and see that's his prior performance and sort of project that forward in today. And harder because he didn't really say anything about real estate except for what I would consider general platitudes, right? Trying to tie in other policies that he really wanted to run on and how that would impact, right? And this is something politicians do. They focus group and they test, and they know what their strong points are and what their weak points are. And if there's a way you can take one of your perceived strong points and talk about that and dovetail it and take the question as asked and go, oh, and this is why it's going to be awesome. All right. They will do it. All right. And so I've gone through this morning and I've read 5 different articles, 5 articles, 4 different articles, and we'll get to that in a second. about, literally like this. How will Trump's win affect the real estate industry? All right. And you can read sometimes in the actual headlines the bias of the author. Okay, let me see if I can pull that one up for you to see it. All right. Okay, and this one is volatile, uncertainty and volatility ahead for housing market under Trump. All right. So, like I said, you can really tell in many cases, am I reading an article or am I reading an editorial? That one right there read as an editorial, but we'll still cover it because, it's a thing. So, do you know where we're going to be? We have to know where we are right now, right? I want to cover the numbers really quick. All right. I notice this is usually when this is where you can go to the bathroom, okay, if you want to, if you don't care about the numbers, right? But we need to get these numbers out of the way because I want to show you a few things. Because guess what, boys and girls? As foretold in the prophecy, here we are. Take a look over this. All right. Actives this week are 21,298, up 13, new record, most we've had on the market since 2016. All right. Our new listings are at 1,957, up 23. Our contracts are at 1,892, up 31. Our closings were 1,678, and coming soon to an MLS near you, 550. And for some reason, every time I see 550, I wonder if I did update it. I don't know why it's constantly coming up as 550. All right. Our supply right now is at 86. Our demand is at 76.8, giving us a Cromford report number of 89.3. Dun, dun, dun. That's a buyer's market, boys and girls. So I've been threatening you with this all fall, and now it's finally arrived, right? Don't be surprised, right? November, December are buyer's markets. Every time somebody looks at me and goes, what's the best time to buy? And I say November and December, they always go, oh, but that's the holidays. You're right, it is. And that means there's a lot of desperate sellers out there and not a lot of buyers, right? I can expect to see demand go down, right? Especially in December. Right? Because nobody wants to move in the holidays. And the funny thing about the world is doing what most people want to do tends to be financially beneficial to you. All right. Write that one down. Okay. Keep that in the back of your mind. Tell it to an 18-year-old who could benefit from my knowledge. All right. But yeah, we have officially crocked over into buyer's market in general in our market. Looking at the individual city areas, and this is the first time I've seen this, right? We are down in Fountain Hills, but they're still leading the pack at 166.9. Our main buyers markets right now are Surprise, Goodyear, Queen Creek, Maricopa, and Buckeye. Nothing new seen there. Tempe and Peoria have actually gone up a bit. Don't know what's going on with Tempe. That place has always been weird. And Phoenix and Cave Creek have gone. Cave Creek went up at 11%. All right. So our sellers markets are Glendale, Scottsdale, Chandler, and Fountain Hills. So still more losers than winners. All right. It depends on which side of the equation are you. Are you team red or not blue, team green? All right. And if you are the seller side, I hope you live in Fountain Hill. If you're a buyer side, I hope Buckeye works out for you because my God, 58.1. Oh, these poor bastards. All right. I'm just thinking about people I've sold houses to in Buckeye. And I'm like, oh, geez. Some days I wish I could really sit there and go, hey, sure you want to be buying right now in this particular neck of the woods? But at the time, Buckeye was actually growing out there. So, hey, let's go to the next set of slides because I want to start talking about. So now we know where we're at right now. Okay, we have. I'm just going to put that right there. We have more inventory than we've seen since 2016. Right. We have interest rates. The Fed just came out 30 minutes ago, just as I was about to record, and they have dropped their another quarter point, right? Which I hope, a lot of people are anticipating means that our lending rates will go down. It'll definitely impact things like your credit card and your car payments, not so much housing. We've seen that since the last 25% cut or 25-point cut. All right. Remember, there's 100 points in a percentage. All right. So they've dropped that down a quarter of a percentage point. All right. But we didn't see the impact on the 10-year bond. We did not see that on the interest rates. In fact, interest rates have been slightly going up and keep going up. Right. So We had a huge day in the stock market yesterday. Last I saw, it was over 1,500. The biggest jump after the day after an election in history. So we know who's happy with the results on that. And I wonder how much of this happiness is not so much who won, but the nature of the win, right? They're using the word landslide, and they're looking at the Republicans not holding the White House, but the House and the Senate, right? Which means you'll see less volatility in government, because even though, just to fire up Team Blue over there, if you get the government to marching in lockstep, all right, and all working as a unified whole, and let's even say a bundle of sticks, a fascia of sticks, and if they're all working in the same direction, there you can at least anticipate what they're going to do, and stock markets like that, right? Asterisk. That was in no way, shape, or form a political statement. That was just a joke, all right? If you didn't get that as a joke, this might not be the channel for you. So anyways, so that might have been the response to this. And you know what? You got pundits out there to do these things. I'm a real estate guy. All right, let's go back to real estate. Let's stay in my lane, Dawson. All right, so remember, I'm going to put myself over here because you don't have to pay attention to the column on the right, because we're looking at the column on the left. My inner historian just cringed at that because we're talking about the, Trump policies, right? He promised to lower mortgage rates by bringing inflation down, right? He supports opening limited portions of federal lands for new home construction. He would increase home ownership through tax incentives and supports for first-time home buyers, and he would cut any unnecessary regulations that increase housing costs. Also along these lines, he's kept talking about how immigration is going to impact that. All right. So let's go back to my three-legged stool. All right. Remember, kids, in Ray's world, housing prices, all right, and home affordability. Home affordability is a stool with three legs. First one is housing prices. What's the price tag on the house? Interest rates plus is the interest rates that lead into your mortgage payments. And then you have your other consumer costs like home insurance, new hot water heaters, new air conditioning, general upkeep, trips to Home Depot. And then the final one is the household income. If the household income cannot support the other two, you're not selling houses. All right. If the household income is huge and great, then you don't care about the prices because you have enough money to spend for it. All right. And if you got enough household income in, you're not buying the 2-year hot water heaters like I do. You're buying the 9-year hot water heaters. All right. You're getting the fancy air conditioning system. You're putting one of those little Nest dials in there or something like that. All right. Household income. So all of these things tie together. So coming off the top. All right. And let's go back to this chart. I have multiple articles here talking about he's promising to lower mortgage rates by bringing inflation down. All right. I've seen a lot of conversation about how they expect Trump to increase inflation, right, because of his tax cuts, right? And in their mind, he is promising on reducing taxes, maybe even eliminating income tax, which would have, all right, an effect on household income because you're keeping more of your money, but they're stating that you're going to lose it on the other side because that's going to raise, inflation because we're going to have to be putting more things on the federal credit card, right? That's an economist, conversation. I am not an economist. I am just a fairly funny real estate agent with delusions of grandeur, all right? But in that particular case, and this is almost getting an editorializing, they are baking into the cake, they're baking into their argument the idea that we're actually not going to see reduced spending. If you can reduce the spending, you don't need as much income. If you can make up your income from your tax cuts with your tariffs coming in, and we're going to be talking about tariffs here in a bit, you will see, and if it just is revenue neutral, which is a magic term that I have not heard in the last year, so maybe we'll start hearing that again. A revenue neutral is the change that we make either brings in much income to make up for the cost of that change, or the reduction in taxes are going to grow our economy to the point where we wind up bringing in more money. Right. One of the interesting little points that was not widely talked about during Trump's last administration, his first one, is we were actually bringing in more money even after his tax cuts. And a lot of people out there are going, hey, wait, how that can be? That does not make sense to me at my education level. Well, there's something called the Laffer curve, right? And it's the idea that if you have less money being pulled out of the civilian side of the economy, the consumer side, regular people, they then tend to use it for things that grow the economy, which means everybody does better, right? And if consumers, have more money to spend, they buy stuff, which means the business owner makes more money, and he can upgrade his machinery, and he can put it back into his business, or buy a yacht, all right? And by buying a yacht, he just employed 27 people to build him his yacht, plus the sales guy, all right, and so on and so forth. So that Laffer curve concept is, you can get more income by reducing your taxes, right, to this special magical place where now you're just cutting into your seed corn. Right? I was asked once from a friend of mine, how do you know when you've hit that magical number on the Laffer curve? And I was like, wow, that's a really good question. And I researched it. Laffer, the guy who created the Laffer curve, actually had an answer for that. You keep cutting taxes until you suddenly see a reduction in income. Then you bump it up a little bit. You've just found the bottom. We've never found the bottom. All right, so could his projected tax cuts and moving everything over to a tariff have this effect? Don't know. All right, now, on the supply side, because remember, supply and demand, all right, directly into housing prices, and especially talking about new housing, all right, let's talk about the immigration policy, all right? This falls under the category, some people take Trump literally but not seriously, and some people take him seriously but not literally. Yeah, okay. If we have, and every one of these articles agree with this. All right, let me see if I can find the number right off the top of my head, because it would be... All right. I get crazy with a highlighter, and then once it's all a big page of highlighter, it's really hard to find that one specific little factoid I wanted. That was from last week. Okay, here's one. According to the National Immigration Forum, warning, if you are ever reading stuff, especially out there on the internets, and somebody starts quoting somebody from an organization whose subject of the topic of conversation is in their name, 9 times out of 10, this is the bias sourced. All right. A lot of times this is a paid by people think tank to turn out pages that you want to hear. All right, but this one right here. According to the National Immigration Forum, there are roughly 1 to 2 million undocumented construction workers nationally, making up between 10 and 19% of the total construction workforce. There is one of the arguments out there is that if you deport all the illegal aliens, we're going to have a huge problem with filling the jobs that Americans won't do, that the illegal aliens are doing. Right? And so there is a conversation here that says if you actually do deport all these people, round them up, throw them back over the wall, drive them down south, catapult them, I don't care the methodology, right? But if you deport these illegal immigrants, you are going to have 100 or 1 to 2 million employees suddenly disappear. Okay? This will drive up costs because now you have to pay more people to do those jobs because, hey, lower supply of labor, higher demand, better wages, right? And they're talking that this could strip about 1.5 million workers from the construction workforce. That includes plasterers, stucco, masons, drywall installers, all those guys, right? And we already have a 500,000, employee deficit in these trades. I hear Mike Rowe warming up in the background, that deep, resonant baritone voice of his, right? But So the mass deportation, every one of these articles discusses that in one way or the other. All right. This would drive up housing prices by reducing supply as houses come on. All right. So that might be a net negative for us, though. All right. Okay. We definitely got to talk about this one in a second. So immigration, that could be the impact on it. On the flip side of this, most people agree 10 million illegal aliens. All right. And when I use the term illegal alien, that is actually a legal term. Right. An alien is a person in the United States of America who's not a citizen of the United States of America. Illegal is a person who is undocumented, and you can come up with whatever catchphrase that you want for that. All right. But we're talking these people who do not have permission to be here. Okay. If these 10 million, illegal aliens, if they're here, if that's an accurate number, okay, they're all sleeping somewhere. Right? They're all being housed somewhere. There is a constant reoccurring number that pops up in every one of these listings that we are about 2.5 million houses short that were not built in the past that should be out there on the market with a Ray Dawson for sale sign in front of them. All right. Part of the argument that Trump is stating on this is that if I deport all these guys, you are suddenly going to have empty places that regular Americans can rent. It will make up the difference. We won't need 2.5 million new houses because I will have gotten rid of 10 of them. Okay. You get rid of 4 for every 1 door. Right. That will balance it out. That's a really rough conversation there, dude, because you're not really comparing apples to oranges. You're almost comparing lemons to oranges. All right. Because that's under the assumption, all right, if we are 2.5 million homes in the deficit, we have a deficit of 2.5 million homes, then my question for you is, what about the studio apartments? What about the housing? All right, that's why I prefer to use the term doors. Okay, is this a door to a studio or is this a door to a McMansion? Doesn't really matter, right? Can you put a household in there? All right, we've had conversation about what a household is. You, an individual living by yourself, is a household of 1. You living with your 3 wives and your 17 kids in southern Utah is a household of 1. All right, so that's you could see that, but everybody on this says that mostly that's going to impact urban rents and urban rental space. And the other thing is, to be honest with you, we're looking at the lower end of housing, right? A landlord who's willing to take the risk of renting to somebody that they're not doing a background check on is not renting the McMansion in Scottsdale. Trust me. If you were sitting there at a certain price point and you want to rent a house, we're doing a colonoscopy on you. All right. Your credit score is on the table. Right. Your employment is on the table. This is everything landlords want to know before they, rent, right, their $750,000 house to you. All right. A person living, out there who's renting out a room or renting out, and I swear to God, I've seen this, the workshop in back, all right, which is geared and separate and locked up to be a separate house. Okay, you know how you tell it was a separate house? It had a deadbolt on it, all right? And, this, that, and the other thing, still a unit, still a door, right? One person can live it with their little space cooler and stuff like that, and I don't know where they're doing, they're probably eating at McDonald's, okay, and I don't know where they're going to the toilet, right? But these are things you got to watch, just consider. That's a unit of housing. It's an illegal, unpermitted, unzoned unit of housing, but it's still a unit of housing. So that person gets picked up and deported. That space suddenly becomes opening for rent. Is it really marketably a market viable rental property? All right, so went a little long on that one, and I'm still really, really paranoid about this not recording properly from last week. So hold on for a second. So, hey, check it out. That worked. I just stopped and uploaded that first half of this thing because after last week, like I said, I'm a little traumatized. So anyways, we were talking about the immigration issue and stuff like that. So if it is a wash, we reduce, you know, 10 million people out of the, off the population, sending them back home. All right, losing 1.5 million construction jobs. If we've zeroed out the need for that 2.5 million extra housing deficit that we're in, is it a wash? Don't know. Strix, Ray's going to go in the editorial here. If you have an illegal alien who is in the country and is working for a construction company, that construction company is probably not paying taxes on that employee. A lot of these employees are hired on as independent contractors, a lot like real estate agents, right? So the job that they're taking there isn't necessarily coming with health care, and it isn't necessarily coming with Social Security, and it's not necessarily coming with workers' comp payments or anything else that an employer generally needs to do when they employ somebody. It's part of the reasons why they're so cheap, right? You don't have all that extra overhead on them. And employers know this, and this is why they hire them. Take a look at Tyson Chicken and how many times they get rated for hiring illegal aliens because they're not making these payments. That person who was to go back to their home country, go down to American consulate and apply for a worker's visa to come in and do exactly the same job as they were doing before, the very fact that they show up with a worker's visa is going to make their labor a lot more expensive to their labor's consumer, the building company, and that would get passed all the way through. So you can almost say that there's a net benefit to the first-time home buyer if their contractors who built their house, the workmen, were illegal aliens. All right. So, but if that system went through that way, and let's say we did have a system in place where, we basically sit there and go, if we catch you and have to move you back home, we're going to take your fingerprints, scan your retina, and if we ever catch you in here again, now we're going to actually charge you for not being in here on time, and you never get to show up. You never get to come to the U.S. You're blacklisted to us or anything like that. But if we don't catch you, right, and the first time we realize you have any interest at all in being in the United States of America is when you show up to an American consulate or an American embassy or go online and apply for one of these worker permits, right? Especially if you can tie into that worker's permit, this is the employer who wants to hire me, and then we fast track you, bring you back in here, all right? That might resolve that. I don't think, be honest with you, I don't think our current government system in place, and I blame both parties for this, are that proactive and forward thinking. That would be a really good way to get people at least on the books and their employers paying, the workers' comp and the taxes and everything else as a employee, a W-2 employee, not a 1099 contractor, all right, which would be a net benefit for everybody. All right, so I think that could get worked out. Now, I've never been one of those persons where, a politician says something while they're running, expecting that to be what they churn out at the end of the day. If you remember, some of the great lines of the past, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You just don't trust what they say when they're saying these things. You got to see what actually gets, once the sausage gets made. But a working program that works out something like that could have a net benefit. And then on the flip side, now you can actually rent to this person because, you have an employer to go after, and they have a Social Security number or an EIN number at that point. So they can pass a background check, so they're not living in the woodshed out in the backyard, right? They can actually have an actual apartment building. All right, so that handles the immigration side of the house. All right, is it a push? Don't know. Next, all right, promises to lower mortgage rates by bringing inflation down. Somebody will have to break to the president that he can only bring inflation down is something he needs to do across the board. And if his energy-focused inflation reduction side, as opposed to we're going to spend a lot of money to reduce inflation, I think is going to work a lot better. All right. So if we actually do go into that drill baby drill and light baby light and reduce the energy prices, you are going to see inflation go down. If we see a lot of the regulation that drives up certain costs of producing products, that would also lower inflation. So that could have an effect on lowering the mortgage rates. But if it's not like he can call up the chairman of the Fed and go, hey, I want to see a half point off by next week, or you're fired. All right, because that person gets put in that position, and they made that job not fireable by the president for a reason, because they want that person to be working without it. And while I was waiting for this to render, I'm of course going back for another bite of the apple. I just saw the quote. Jerome Powell, Trump can't legally fire me. I'm feeling pretty good, and I will not resign if asked. So don't embarrass yourself by trying to get rid of him. All right? You got to work with him. All right. So if Trump wants to see lower interest rates, he needs to bring inflation down. That should be his number one focus. All right. Across the thing. Now, increase home ownership through tax incentives and support for first-time homebuyers. That's just fiddling with the numbers and stuff like that. You guys know my policies on these things before. I did see something today talking about, is it time to take Fannie and Freddie out of conservatorship? You guys might not know this, but currently Fannie and Freddie are being owned and operated by the federal government. They were basically seized during the Obama administration as part of the bailout program after the crash. Right, and it's like a really nice banking system you have here. It's ours now, comrade. All right. And with the idea is that once we get through this, we're going to kick it back over to you guys. Well, we've had, some of the greatest run up in, greatest profitability in real estate since the crash, and the government's been making money off of that. So can we release Fannie and Freddie back into their two separate entities, privately owned, and they can start generating? Will that lower overall housing costs, because they'll be able to rent out or loan money out at a lower rate, because with everything government, said this last week, it comes with entanglements, and there's an argument out there that Fannie and Freddie, because they have to meet these government mandates that the government has been pushing down on top of them, all right, that it has increased overall interest rates for everybody. So that might be something that he can look into. Would cut any unnecessary regulations and increase housing costs. Okay. Zoning and housing permits and the stuff that gets your job signed off on by the county inspector. Right? Feds have very little to do with that. All right. If you wanted to cut any unnecessary regulations, you would want to be going to that company in Texas that makes the breaker boxes and going through and say, is there any unnecessary regulations here that we can cut so you can make these things cheaper? All right. And the world's complex. Everything is really, really, really complex. All right. And when you tweak stuff like that, you don't know what the secondary and third, tertiary effects, the impacts of what you've done downstream. So I'm not sure if you really want to go into the one place in town that makes the breaker boxes and go, how can we lower your costs? I've noticed this. These OSHA guys are really making you guys waste a lot of time. We'll just get rid of OSHA. And next, Health and Human Services expenses going up because you got all these one-legged guys wandering around because they lost their legs in a press accident because OSHA wasn't there to make sure the guardrail wasn't up to make sure their leg didn't slip into the machine. All right? Yeah, we can get a little crazy when we start talking about these things, of course. Then you have OSHA out there shutting down entire manufacturing plants because they find that the guardrail was only 34 3/4 of an inch high when the regulations clearly stated it needed to be 35 inches. All right, so shut the line down. All right, so yeah, you 6 of one, half dozen of another. I can play both sides on this one, depending on who's paying me. I would have made a great attorney, wouldn't I? So I'm not sure how much of an impact unnecessary regulations increase housing costs would actually have. If you want if Trump really, really wanted to impact housing costs right now, easiest one out there, as I see it, you can't have any effect on the interest rate. Okay. You can do various little things to offset sort of housing costs of acquisition. You know, one of the things you could do right off the bat, there's new regulation going in. Brand new air conditioner Freon type going in 2025. Yes, your old air conditioner that's been treating you well for the last 10 years, if a hailstone knocks it out and a Freon leaks out all over the place and you need to go to replace it, you're looking at having to buy a whole brand new air conditioner. Right? This is to protect the ozone layer. This will be the second huge change just on air conditioning in the last 14 years, because I remember when going to R14 was a big thing, and now we're going to go to this new one, right? And looking at regulations and figuring out, okay, how much more of an impact are we getting for this extra little amount? All right. That's that's something you could look into on that. All right. That would be affecting housing costs, lower the inflation rate. Definitely going to impact housing costs. Will impact everything downstream. Housing prices itself. We talked last week about some of the federal land and releasing that. Showed you that little parcel, that tasty parcel of land just sitting there, out there in the middle of houses. All right, that's owned by I think it was BLM, just sitting there. All right, showed you how we put 3,000 houses on that, which, ironically enough, all right, I don't think I mentioned this last time. 21,000 active new listings gives us at 86% of where we should be. I grab the calculator, okay, and I take 21,000 and I divide that by 86%. Watch this, boys and girls. 90.86 puts us at 24,418 houses, which is based on our population, how much we have. All right, so I take 21,000 and I add 3,000 more houses to it. I put us at 24. All right, that literally puts us, we're off by 100 houses, right, of where we should be. Ultimately, we want to see this number, all right, at 100. We want to see that number as houses. We should, if we had that number shown as houses as 100, that means we would have as much houses as we're supposed to have based on our population. In motion, in the churn, right? So, yeah, I'm okay with that one. But once again, we're unique. That works for Maricopa County. That doesn't work for New Jersey. New Jersey doesn't have any federal land that we could kick that off to. They might have an office building downtown that they can get rid of and turn into like loft apartments or something, but it's not the same, all right? Going back to this, so housing prices, big thing that's going to need to happen if you want home affordability, household income. We need to see wages go up. We get wages up by increasing the number of jobs and decreasing the number of labor looking for that. That will instantly turn into, increase in wages. And that's how we go about doing it. I wanted to show you one last chart here. All right. Rate impact on home prices. All right. This is your interest rates that we've seen. All right. And I was trying to find some really good numbers because what I was doing is I was going back and I wanted to see really what was going on during the time he was in office, his first election. Right. And because of COVID, I had to, I decided to be fair and honest, and COVID impacted both administrations in different ways. So what I did is I dropped the COVID years, 20 and 21, all right, because the first one we had this weird drop because of COVID. The second one we have this huge spike in GDP because of COVID, all right? And then I averaged the sitting years, all right? Obama sat for 8 years, all right? Obama had an average GDP growth of 2.31% per year, right? Biden, without that first year where we were bouncing out of the COVID thing, so we can't trust those numbers, had a 2.2 average gross domestic product increase per year. Trump's was 2.6. he had 2 years at 2.5 and then 1 year at like a total of 3. All right. But this right here, all right, you can see the green line is house prices based on that 100 index. Remember, we always go 100 on the 2000. And like I said, Arizona, we're really unique. We were actually selling houses at $100 a square foot back in 2000. All right. This chart, they zeroed it out at 100 right there. All right. Here's our run up. Here's our crash. And then we had this growth spurt going up right here. All right. And what's interesting, if I didn't block it out by putting this, okay, January 28th, 2021, that's roughly 2 or 3 days after Biden takes office, right? You suddenly see that interest rate spike kick on, all right? At the same time as that interest rate spike, actually that interest rate spike comes in about right there. But if that wasn't there, you would see this little growth that we were having, which is mostly us trying to catch up from a normal trend from where we should be. All of a sudden it shoots up, and that's that COVID run. That huge COVID run that happened in November. All right. When you watch my video as we very, very much first started, in fact, I'll show you right now because I use the same PowerPoint slide for everything. All right. Right here. See where it says that's actual and active shot that was taken of the chart I was using at the time that the graphics designer worked up. We had 4,217 houses for sale one day. All right. We have 21 now. Right. So, and that's only in the 196, episodes I've been recording this. All right. So 196 weeks. Somebody get your calculator out and figure out how many years that is. All right. So looking back at this run right here, as soon as the screen updates, when those house prices really started spiking up like that, it's because our inventory was incredibly low. Now our inventory is closer to normal. All right. Hopefully we see this balance out. I don't want to continue this anymore. This doesn't help anybody except sellers. All right. Nice to be a seller. I'm a homeowner. I'd be a seller if I ever wanted to sell. All right. But that doesn't get those new people in there. All right. And it was that interest rate spike, that return. And if you notice, 2012, okay, our interest rate was about a little bit below 4%. All right. Trump wasn't president back in 2012. All right. Obama comes in, he gets elected in 08, comes in, first month of 09. All right. We had this run right here. This is all Bush. All right. We're talking sixes in that huge run up right there before the crash. We're sitting at sixes. In fact, we even went up a little. That little jog that goes up right there might have been enough to kill the party. It's a glide slope. Boom. Right. And then here they start spiking the interest rates down, trying to make up for that. And I would honestly say as soon as we hit right here, they should have started juicing it back up so we didn't get this run. But that run is mostly COVID. All right. So this isn't, the economy is not it's not a dial. Okay. It's not your 5 transistor radio that takes a 9-volt battery, the ones that you look to see if they're still good, right? With the metal antenna, and you go volume, station. That's not how the economy works, right? It's not even like the equalizer on your stereo system. We had 32 different channels, and you can just adjust every little thing a little bit at a time, right? The economy, and housing is part of the economy, do not forget that, boys and girls, is the ultimate interaction of every human being on the face of the earth. The market is the way every human being on the face of the earth communicates with every other human being on the face of the earth. And we communicate by saying have and want, right? And value. That value that means to me. I have a piece of plastic right here. All right. This piece of plastic, effective value to me is zero. In fact, it's negative because I got to throw it away. It's clutter. But this piece of plastic, being able to be put on a bottle, hopefully, of water, suddenly modified this bottle of water, right, to something I can throw in my bag and take with me. If I don't have that piece of plastic, I can't throw it in my bag. I can't take it with me. All right? Now that piece of plastic suddenly became valuable. And if you're sitting out there and you could suddenly use a piece of plastic and you have something that's pretty much valueless to you but would be valuable to me, then we can arrange a trade. And that's what market signaling does. Right? You don't have to text somebody. All right? You simply put it on the market, and that's how this huge egregore that we're all part of right now, how our system communicates to each other. It's not YouTube. It's not, it's not MSNBC. It's not turning into Kramer in the morning where he's telling you what your stock price is going to do. All right? It's how we shoot value back. It's how we communicate value. I have labor that I need to have done. We were discussing this right now. What would 10,000 contacts be worth to me? Well, 10,000 contacts, we're talking people who have bought and sold a house before, all right? Their name, their phone number, and their email address. How much would one of those things be worth? Well, if it comes in on a piece of paper, you literally write it on a Post-it note and hand it to me, and you give me 10,000 Post-it notes. The overall value of those 10,000 Post-it notes are going to be worth less than if I hand you a zip drive. God, I'm so old that I'm still calling them zip drives. A flash drive, right, with all of those things arranged in a file format. All right, common separated value, boom, I can upload that in my database. I can then automate that thing, right? So the value of all these things change. The value of houses, all right, are made up of the value of the materials and the value of labor. Materials plus labor plus capital, all right, equals the end product. We don't just set the volume and set the channel. All right. This is going to be a lot of work, right? I think this is part of the reason why politicians do not like getting involved in trying to fix real estate. And I really don't blame them. Right? There are things that they can do, all right, that will adjust things. All right. But they're not going to be able to flip the big switch and make housing more affordable today. But what I know, I'm just a real estate agent. But if anybody knows the Trump administration and they don't have a name yet for Director of Housing and Urban Development, I would love that job. Let me know where I could send my CV. I think I do a pretty good interview, and I would have a lot of fun in that job. It would be a bloodbath in the best sense of the word. I would go through there like Ari Gold walking back onto the office floor with my paintball gun. All right, and I would go to town on there. I would do the Elon Musk first memo to every employee when he took over Twitter was, what projects did you work on this week? And that was the first cut. If you couldn't explain what your project was that you were working on this week, right? So, I don't know. Same thing, housing and urban development doesn't have a lot of impact on stuff. But I would rule with a firm and fair iron fist. All right. My mandates would go forth across the country, and I'd proclaim to the world, thou shall watch your children and pets around water. All right. Don't drive in anything flooded. You guys all saw that coming, didn't you? All right. I want you guys to work your circles. I want you guys to have a great weekend. Call your mother. Tell her that you love her. Talk to you guys later.